My brother exploited me for 2 years, then lied to destroy my career. So I sued him and the feds ended his business forever. Hey Reddit, I've been lurking on here for years, reading all the wild stories and never thinking I'd have one of my own to share. But here I am, living through what feels like a nightmare turned revenge story. And I figured it's finally time to put it all out there. All right, here's the deal. I'm a 27-year-old male who just graduated with a degree in computer science. After all those late nights studying, surviving on instant noodles, and pulling my GPA out of the gutter, I was finally done. I was ready to start my career, maybe land a decent job, and actually live like a functioning adult. But then my brother, a 41-year-old male, swooped in with what he called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now my brother, let's call him Jack, is one of those guys who thinks he's always the smartest person in the room. He talks big, acts bigger, and somehow convinces everyone he's a genius. So when he told me he was starting a finance and investment company with his 2 partners, I wasn't exactly shocked. Jack loves the spotlight and the idea of being the boss. Jack said they needed someone they could trust to set up the infrastructure for their new company. You're the perfect guy for this, he told me. We need someone smart, reliable, and who won't screw us over. I should have known that last part was a red flag, but I was too caught up in the flattery to notice. At first I thought, why not? It's just a summer gig. I figured I'd help them set up their systems, get some experience under my belt, and then move on to a real job. Plus, he's my brother. I thought helping him out was the least I could do. Sure, helping him turned into one of the worst decisions of my life. When I first started, it seemed straightforward enough. They needed someone to handle the tech side, set up servers, create email accounts, and design a website. Simple stuff, really. But then the job started to grow. Suddenly, I wasn't just the tech guy anymore. I was answering phones, scheduling their meetings, and greeting clients. Then they had me running errands, managing accounts, and even doing research for their deals. I became the office's all-in-one lackey. And the pay? Oh, let's talk about the pay. Over 2 years, they handed me maybe $7,000 total. That's not a salary, that's pocket change. They didn't even pay me consistently. It was like, oh, here's a check for $500. Don't spend it all in one place. Meanwhile, I was working full-time hours, sometimes pulling 60-hour weeks to keep up with their demands. I tried bringing it up a few times, saying, hey, I thought I was just here for tech support. This feels like way more than that. Jack would laugh it off like I'd made a joke. Come on, bro, he'd say. We're building something amazing here. Everyone's pitching in. Sure, but the difference was that everyone else was getting paid. His partners, let's call them Partner A and Partner B, were living it up, fancy cars, expensive suits, and constant bragging about their business success. Meanwhile, I couldn't even afford to replace my broken laptop because, surprise, I wasn't getting paid enough to save up for anything. Partner A was the worst. He had this smug way of talking down to me, like I was some intern who didn't know how to tie my shoes. Every time I'd suggest something or ask about getting paid, he'd hit me with, maybe you're not cut out for this level of work. Partner B, on the other hand, was the quiet, manipulative type. He'd guilt-trip me into staying late or taking on extra work, saying stuff like, we're counting on you, man, don't let us down. It was like they'd perfected the art of making me feel guilty for wanting basic respect. But Jack, he was the ringleader of it all. He dangled these promises in front of me, saying, once the company takes off, you'll be part of the core team. You're family, so you're going to get a bigger piece of the pie. And I fell for it every single time. I kept thinking, okay, they're just getting started. It's a rough patch, but it'll get better. It didn't. The more successful the company got, the less they acknowledged my contributions. They started taking me for granted, acting like I was lucky to even be there. What really opened my eyes was how they treated me in meetings. Whenever clients or investors came in, I wasn't introduced as the guy who built their entire system. Nope, I was just Jack's little brother who helps out around the office. They made it clear I wasn't part of their team. I was just the errand boy. By the time 2 years rolled around, I'd had enough. I was exhausted, broke, and fed up with them. I decided to go back to school for my master's degree. It wasn't an easy decision, though. Jack had a way of making me feel like I owed him something, like I was abandoning them. You're just going to leave us hanging? He said when I told him I was leaving. After everything we've done for you, done for me? Are you kidding? You've been exploiting me for 2 years. I didn't say that, though. I just told him I needed to focus on my future and that this wasn't sustainable for me anymore. But Jack didn't see it that way. To him, I was ungrateful. Fine, he said, do whatever you want. Just don't come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake. Walking away from that job felt like ripping off a Band-Aid. I thought it was going to hurt, but honestly, it was more of a relief. I figured, okay, it's over now. Time to move on. Except it wasn't over, not even close. Sure, things had ended badly, but I figured Jack would cool off, and we'd go back to being family eventually. Maybe not best buddies, but at least civil. I had no plans to drag this drama out. I wanted to focus on grad school and leave that mess behind me. For a while, everything seemed fine. I'd enrolled in my program, started building a new routine, and even sent out my resume for part-time tech jobs to help with tuition. I included my work at Jack's company because, let's face it, I'd put in 2 years of solid effort there. I worked my ass off. It was a small company, but I'd been instrumental in setting it up and managing the systems. I figured potential employers would see that and think, hey, this guy's experienced. The first few interviews went well, at least at first. People were impressed with my skills, my education, and the projects I'd worked on. They even seemed excited about the work I'd done for Jack's company. But then something weird started happening. Almost every time after a promising start, the vibe would shift. I'd get polite but vague emails like, "We've decided to move forward with another candidate," or "We don't think you're the right fit for our team." At first, I chalked it up to bad luck or stiff competition. But after the 5th rejection, I started to wonder if something else was going on. Then I got a call from a recruiter who had been helping me. She sounded hesitant, almost like she didn't want to tell me what she'd found out. After some coaxing, she finally told me what the others didn't. Jack and his partners had been contacted by a few of the companies I'd applied to for reference checks, and instead of confirming my work, they flat out denied I'd ever been employed there. "They're saying you never worked for them," she told me. "They claimed you're lying to pad your resume." I was stunned. "Why would they do that?" I asked her. She hesitated again before continuing. "They also said you tried to use their name to get ahead. And there's more." "More? What more?" "They're claiming you showed up at their office uninvited and harassed female employees." My heart dropped. That didn't even make sense. First off, I hadn't stepped foot in their office since the day I quit. Second, there weren't even any female employees at that company when I worked there. Jack's team was literally just him, the 2 partners, and me. It was a blatant, disgusting lie. Hearing this was like being hit by a truck. Not only were they sabotaging my career, but they were also dragging my name through the mud with the kind of accusation that could ruin someone's life. I felt betrayed on a level I didn't even know existed. I called Jack immediately, hoping there was some misunderstanding. Maybe the companies had contacted the wrong people, or someone was exaggerating. But no. Jack picked up the phone, and as soon as I brought it up, he laughed. He laughed like I just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Oh, are you doing this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because you're trying to screw with us," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. "You're trying to use my company to boost your resume, and I'm not going to let you." "Well, what are you even talking about? I worked there for 2 years. I built your entire system. You know that." "Yeah, well, you shouldn't have left," he said, like that was justification enough. I was shaking with anger. "And you're ruining my chances at getting a job. Do you even care?" Jack laughed again. "That's what you get for crossing us," he said before hanging up. I stared at my phone, dumbfounded. This wasn't just petty revenge. This was straight sabotage. Jack wasn't just upset that I'd left. He wanted to destroy me for it. For days I stewed over what to do. I wanted to believe this would blow over, that Jack would realize how insane he was being and back off. But I was already screwed. Every company I'd applied to had written me off because of his lies. I was stuck with no job prospects and no way to clear my name. That's when I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. I reached out to a counselor at my school for advice. I didn't even know where to start. She listened patiently as I explained everything, how Jack had exploited me, lied to employers, and smeared my reputation. When I finished, she looked at me and said, "You need to take legal action. This isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's defamation." The word legal hit me hard. I'm barely starting my career, and here I am dragging someone to court, my own brother. But deep down, I knew if I didn't take a stand, he'd just keep walking all over me, and I'd never move forward. 2 years of unpaid labor, the lies, the accusations. It wasn't just my career he was wrecking. He was coming for my whole life. With the counselor's help, I found an attorney who specialized in defamation cases. We went over everything, my employment record, the emails from prospective employers, and the recruiter's statements. We filed the lawsuit a few weeks later. When Jack and his partners were served, I expected some kind of reaction, maybe an apology, maybe even a denial. Instead, Jack called me, laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. "Really? A lawsuit?" he said. "You're such a little—" I tried to keep my cool. "You've left me no choice, Jack. You lied about me to employers. You made up disgusting accusations. You think I'm just going to let that slide? Oh, please, he scoffed. You're not going to win. You're wasting your time. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. Jack didn't seem fazed. Do what you want, little bro. Just don't cry when it blows up in your face. He hung up, and I realized something. Jack wasn't going to back down. He was treating this like some kind of twisted game, and I was the target. That just made me more determined to see this through. But the thing is, it wasn't just Jack. Within days, my dad got involved. He called me, and from the moment I answered, I could tell he wasn't calling to support me. Look, he said, this whole thing is ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just a little brotherly roughhousing. You don't sue family. Brotherly roughhousing? Are you kidding me? Jack had sabotaged my career, accused me of horrible things, and laughed about it. This wasn't roughhousing, it was betrayal on a whole new level. I tried to explain that to my dad, but he wouldn't hear it. You're taking this too far, he said, his tone sharp. You need to drop this lawsuit and sit down with your brother to work things out. Honestly, why am I not surprised? It's not like they were bad to me growing up or anything, but it was always clear they liked Jack better. My dad had always had a soft spot for Jack, who could do no wrong. He was the family's big guy, the golden child, the one who was supposed to carry on the family name as some hotshot businessman. And me? I guess I was just the quiet one who didn't make waves. Still, hearing my own father completely ignore what I'd been through stung in a way I can't describe. Dad, he lied about me to employers. He accused me of things that could ruin my life. This isn't something we can just talk out over dinner. My dad scoffed. He's your brother. Family forgives. I bit my tongue, trying not to snap. Does family also destroy each other's reputations? Because that's what he did to me. Enough, my dad said, his voice rising. You're uninvited from Thanksgiving until you come to your senses. Uninvited. My dad was so determined to protect Jack that he was willing to cut me off entirely. It hurt, but it wasn't surprising. My mom, on the other hand, stayed quiet through most of this. She didn't call me, didn't text me, didn't even try to mediate. I could tell she was torn, caught between her husband and her youngest son. But her silence felt like a betrayal in its own way. Things escalated further when my sisters got involved. At first, they were supportive. Both of them called me after they heard about the lawsuit, and they were furious with Jack. You're doing the right thing, one of them said. He needs to face the consequences. But then, about a week later, the tone shifted. My sisters called again, but this time their voices were hesitant. They said they had talked it over and decided they couldn't be involved anymore. It's just, this is too much for us, one of them said, her voice shaky. We love you, but we can't handle the stress. Stress? I asked, my voice rising. Do you have any idea what I'm dealing with? Jack tried to ruin my life, and you're worried about stress? They started crying, saying they felt stuck in the middle and didn't want to take sides. But their actions said otherwise. They uninvited me and my girlfriend from Christmas, saying it was for the best. It was like they were choosing Jack and my parents over me, and it felt like a punch to the gut. To make matters worse, they texted my girlfriend directly to let her know we weren't welcome. She was livid. Who the hell do they think they are? She said, pacing around our living room. They're enabling Jack's behavior, and they don't even see it. She fired off a scathing reply, calling them out for their cowardice and lack of support. I didn't love that she went nuclear, but I couldn't blame her. She was just as hurt and angry as I was. The family drama didn't stop there. A few nights later, my dad confronted us outside a family friend's house. We'd been invited to a holiday gathering, and I guess he found out we'd be there. He cornered us in the driveway, his face red with anger. You need to stop this nonsense, my dad said, jabbing his finger at me as soon as he saw me walk in. His voice was sharp, cold. What are you even doing here? You shouldn't be invited. You're not a family guy anymore, throwing your own brother in court. If you want to be part of family gatherings, maybe start acting like it. I froze for a second, the sting of his words hitting hard. Then I snapped. No, Dad, Jack is the problem here. All I'm doing is standing up for myself. His face darkened. You're being selfish. You're putting your pride over your family. Pride? I shot back, my voice rising. You think this is about pride? Jack lied about me, sabotaged my career, and accused me of disgusting things, and you're defending him. What kind of father does that? For a second, his eyes flickered like he was unsure. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten through to him. But then my girlfriend stepped in, done with biting her tongue. Her voice was ice cold. You're a terrible father, she said. You're enabling a bully, and you're throwing your other son under the bus. His face crumpled. He opened his mouth to say something, but my girlfriend didn't let him. Don't bother. You've already made your choice. We all see where your loyalty lies. Meanwhile, my mom sat in the truck the whole time, watching silently, like she didn't even want to be part of the conversation. I don't even think she could hear us clearly, or maybe she just didn't care enough to step in. She couldn't face what was happening or what they'd all allowed to happen. That night made everything crystal clear. My dad wasn't going to change. My sisters were too afraid or too loyal to Jack to back me up, and my mom, she was too passive. The only people I could count on were myself and my girlfriend, who had been my anchor through all of this. By the time the lawsuit started gaining traction, I thought I'd hit my limit with how bad things could get. But no, Jack and his partners weren't done yet, and my family wasn't making anything easier. Every day felt like a new obstacle, whether it was more nonsense from my brother's side or my parents calling to pressure me into backing off. The stress was suffocating. Then, one night, while I was digging through old files on my laptop, I stumbled across something that made my heart race. I had completely forgotten about it, but there it was. A folder containing client lists, contracts, and emails from when I worked for Jack's company. These weren't just random files, they were explosive. The client lists weren't just any lists. They were stolen from Jack and his partner's previous employers before they started their company. Back then, they had bragged about how these lists were their ticket to success, the foundation of their entire business. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now I realized how incriminating this was. This wasn't just shady, it was illegal. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my mind racing. I had two immediate thoughts. First, this could completely destroy Jack's case. And second, it could also destroy him. I won't lie, as much as I wanted justice, I wasn't trying to ruin his life entirely. I wanted accountability, not annihilation. But then I thought about everything Jack had done to me. He had no problem trying to ruin my life. So why was I hesitating to let him face the consequences of his own actions? The next morning, I called my attorney and told him about the files. His reaction was immediate. Bring them to the office now. When I dropped off the laptop, his firm went into overdrive. Within hours, they called me back, asking me to come in for an urgent meeting. When I got there, my attorney's face was a mix of excitement and seriousness. These files change everything, he said. We're turning this over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I blinked. Wait, the feds? Why? Because this isn't just evidence for your case, he explained. This is evidence of criminal activity, fraud, theft, you name it. Once the U.S. attorney gets involved, it's out of our hands. Hearing that sent a chill down my spine. My attorney assured me this was the right move, but he also gave me a grim warning. Prepare yourself. This is going to get messy, and you need to brace for what your family might say about you when they're under pressure. He wasn't kidding. The fallout started almost immediately. Jack and his partners must have realized the files had been turned over because their new attorney suddenly shifted gears. They started scrambling to salvage whatever they could, but it was obvious they were panicking. The first big blow came when Jack and his partners closed their business. It didn't surprise me. There was no way they could keep operating with the feds breathing down their necks. But it was still surreal to see their company, the one they had bragged about endlessly, crumble overnight. Then the real family drama kicked into high gear. My dad called me again, but this time he wasn't trying to play peacemaker. He was furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouted. "You're ruining your brother's life." "No, Dad," I shot back. "He ruined his own life." "You could have handled this privately," he snapped. "Now you've got the government involved. Do you know how humiliating this is for our family?" Humiliating, that's what he cared about. Not the lies, not the accusations, not the fact that Jack had tried to destroy me, just the embarrassment it brought to the family name. It was like he couldn't see the bigger picture, or worse, he just didn't care. Then he dropped the real bombshell. "Your mother and I might be subpoenaed because of this. You've dragged us into your mess." My mess? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jack was the one who'd stolen client lists, lied to employers, and treated me like dirt. But somehow this was my fault. My attorney had warned me this would happen, but it still hit hard. My dad wasn't just unsupportive, he was actively blaming me for everything. Things got even worse when my sisters called. They were both crying, saying they didn't want to get involved anymore. "We love you, but this is too much," one of them said. Too much? Jack had spent 2 years exploiting me, sabotaging me, and smearing my name, but I was the one who was too much? It was like they couldn't separate their loyalty to Jack from the reality of what he'd done. And honestly, I think they were scared. Jack had always been the dominant one, the one who called the shots. Standing up to him wasn't easy, and I think they just didn't have the courage to do it. Meanwhile, Jack's new attorneys reached out, asking what it would take to settle. It was clear they knew they were in trouble, but I wasn't about to let them off easy, not after everything they'd put me through. As I sat in my attorney's office, watching the chaos unfold, one thought kept running through my mind. this isn't just about the lawsuit anymore. Jack and his partners didn't just shut their business quietly. They tried to paint themselves as victims, claiming the lawsuit had drained their resources and forced them to close. It was an obvious play for sympathy, but it wasn't working. Between the client list files and the investigation now being handled by federal authorities, their story didn't hold water. Everyone who had been working with them, or even considering it, bailed the second the news broke. But of course, Jack wasn't going to take this lying down. He still had one more trick up his sleeve, using our parents to try to guilt me into backing off. The week after their company closed, my dad called me again. This time, he wasn't shouting, he was pleading. "Son, don't you think this has gone far enough? Jack's lost his business. Isn't that enough punishment?" I gripped the phone tighter, my patience wearing thin. "Dad, this isn't just about the business. He lied about me to employers, accused me of disgusting things, and tried to ruin my career. Losing his business is the bare minimum of what he deserves." My dad sighed, his voice breaking. Family sticks together. That phrase, family sticks together, was like nails on a chalkboard. I'd heard it a million times growing up, but now it felt like a weapon being used against me. "If family sticks together, then why did Jack stab me in the back?" I snapped. "Why is it my job to forgive him when he hasn't even apologized?" My dad didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he shifted gears, trying to play the victim himself. "And your mother and I are being dragged into this. Do you know how humiliating it is to be subpoenaed because of your own children?" "That's not my fault," I said firmly. "If you're embarrassed, blame Jack. He's the one who created this mess, not me." The conversation ended there, but the damage was already done. My dad wasn't going to stop pressuring me, and my mom still hadn't said a word to me directly. She stayed in the background, as if hoping the whole thing would blow over if she ignored it long enough. But Jack, he wasn't ignoring anything. He sent me a message a few days later, and it was the most infuriating thing I'd ever read. "On you've got what you wanted," he wrote, "and the company's gone, and I'm broke. Happy now? You always were a selfish little brat." That was it. That was the moment I snapped. For years, I'd put up with his arrogance, his manipulation, and his lies. But this, acting like he was the victim after everything he'd done, it was too much. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat down and wrote out everything I wanted to say to him. No holding back, no sugarcoating. When I finally sent it, I didn't care if it burned every bridge left between us. "Jack," I wrote, "you've spent your entire life thinking you're better than everyone else, and now you're finally facing the consequences of your actions. You're not the victim here. You lied, you stole, and you tried to ruin me for no reason other than your own ego. So no, I'm not happy that you're broke. I'm relieved that people are finally seeing you for who you really are. If you want to blame someone for what's happened, look in the mirror. This is all on you." A few weeks later, during a deposition for the lawsuit, Jack and his partners tried to claim I had agreed to work for free as part of some verbal agreement. It was a desperate move, and it didn't work. My attorney had emails, text messages, and other evidence that proved I'd been promised payment for my work. Then came the real blow. My parents were subpoenaed to testify. My attorney warned me this would be hard to watch, and he was right. My dad doubled down on the idea that I had worked for free, saying, and he was living at home at the time. We thought that was his way of contributing to the family. It was a blatant lie, and it hurt more than I expected. But it was my mom's testimony that really got to me. She claimed she had seen Jack offer me payment multiple times and that I had refused. He said he didn't need the money, she testified, and because he was more focused on helping the family. Hearing her say that felt like a punch to the gut. She knew it wasn't true. She had watched me struggle, barely scraping by, while Jack and his partners thrived. Yet here she was, lying under oath to protect him. When it was over, my attorney looked at me and said, "I know this is hard, but it's not going to change the outcome. Their lies won't hold up against the evidence." He was right. A few weeks later, Jack and his partners finally caved. They agreed to a settlement that included financial restitution, written apologies, and retraction letters to every employer they had lied to about me. They also admitted guilt in the legal record, which was more satisfying than I expected. But the real revenge came from the fallout of the client list files. The federal investigation uncovered even more illegal activity, including forged signatures and fraudulent contracts. Jack and his partners lost their professional licenses and were banned from working in finance ever again. When I heard the news, I couldn't stop smiling. Jack had spent his entire life acting like he was untouchable, and now he was completely ruined. He had no business, no reputation, and no future in the industry he had built his identity around. Jack and his partners didn't just sign the settlement. They paid me a total of $320,000, which covered the wages they owed me for 2 years of unpaid work and additional damages. The breakdown was simple. I was owed at least $100,000 to $120,000 for the work I'd done. They admitted guilt and paid me a settlement that covered what they owed me for my work, plus damages. They also sent retraction letters to every employer they had lied to, officially clearing my name. It wasn't just about the money. It was the acknowledgement that they had wronged me and were being forced to face the consequences. On paper, it was a victory, but in reality, it felt hollow. My family was in shambles, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the damage was permanent. I blocked Jack's number after one final message he had texted me saying, "You're nothing without this family. Good luck out there on your own." I didn't even respond. I knew he was trying to bait me, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. The fallout with my parents was harder to deal with. My dad refused to speak to me, and my mom wasn't much better. Even after Jack admitted guilt in the settlement, they still didn't apologize or even acknowledge how much damage had been done. Instead, they stayed firmly in his corner, acting like he was the real victim in all of this. If they couldn't see past their blind loyalty to Jack even after everything he had done, then I didn't see a reason to keep them in my life. So, I cut them off completely. No calls, no texts, no trying to smooth things over. They made their choice, and now I was making mine. Now I'm focusing on myself. I'm using the money from the settlement to rebuild my life and invest in my future. Some of it is going toward paying off student loans, but most of it will be used to build my career. I've already lined up certifications to expand my skill set, and I'm working on a few side projects to get my name out there in the tech world. Thank you for reading until the end. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't about blood. Sometimes the people you think are good, the ones you trust the most, turn out to be the ones who hurt you the worst.